It is currently about 7:30 p.m. here in the California Republic, and that won't start. Let's get to the headline right at the top. This is a huge sea change for the people that make it. No, not just Dodge, the overall Stellantis group. Yeah, there's the bullets and numbers of this being a full EV, dual motor, but that's not why it's important. Why it's important is this is a whole platform that underpins many other cars within the Stellantis group, which is, it's kind of like a Turkish bazaar of brands at this point, at least in the car world. This underpins not just the Dodge Charger, both a two-door and a coming four-door, but also the Jeep Wagoneer S, which is already out, as well as the Jeep Recon. Now the Jeep Recon, that's the only one so far I know that will have two different battery sizes. For the avoidance of doubt, this is a 100.5 kilowatt hour, usable about 94 kilowatts. How much range? Forget what the EPA says. Every time I've charged this here at the hangar, I've gotten, 230 miles of shown stated range. But when I drive it on the freeway, like taking it out to the shoot road and back, that's 55 miles. I started here with 210 miles of range, and when I got there, it was 205. So something tells me there's more than the 230 you see from the government. Now we do need to stop here and clear up some confusion. This is not the first electric car from the overall Stellantis group. You probably think of electric cars from a brand in Italy. Those don't ride on the same platform as this. They don't really share components. Those are built off a modified version that underpins the current Alfa Romeos. However, the folks in the Netherlands, that's where they're based, they've announced that this platform will underpin future Alfa Romeos. Then there is the size of this thing. You don't understand how big it is until you get near it. To really compare it in your brain with something you know, a Mercedes S-Class, the wheelbase, meaning from here to here, the same size. This, a Dodge two-door Charger. But that's really not what kind of paints the picture of the size. Look at how tall this is. I'm 6 foot tall, but really, this is over 59 inches tall. That sounds all fine and good, right? Well, a Rolls-Royce Ghost is 61 inches tall. Why yes, you do hear a rumble, yet hand to God, this all EV. So you know it's gonna be heavy. But are you really ready? 5,698 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 2,585 kilograms. Now to balance that, I do want to point out, Mopar pageantry. Thank you for the pistol grip shifter. With that, oh, it sounds like a Mopar muscle car. Oh, wait, this is a very big girl. A lot to muscle around corners. You know what, I'm gonna say the quiet part out loud. None of us are surprised that this thing is quick. It's really, is it effective at convincing you that this is a performance car? And there, I have to compare this thing to a Hyundai, and to do that, I want to bring in more regen. There are 3 levels of regen here. The Hyundai Ioniq 5N. Myself and many people you probably watch all agree that's the best driving performance EV out there, better than the Taycan, because they put imperfections in it. They use your sensory input here and here with fake sound and fake gears to convince you it's a performance car that you've known for decades. Here, they're 40% as effective because they're only doing the sound. And to answer that, we have to go back to like an urban tale. The guy that just gets married, has his first home-cooked meal with his lovely wife. She makes his favorite, a ham. And the ham that she makes, she cuts off the ends before putting it in the pan. He asks her why. She goes, that's the way my mother always did it. A couple months later, they go to Mom's house, and he asks Mom. And she says, oh, that's the way my mother always did it. A couple months after that, they go to Grandma's house. And he asks Grandma, why do you cut the ends off the ham? She says, oh, when we first got married, we didn't have any money. We had this small pan, didn't fit a ham, so I had to cut the ends off. And that's why you and I need sounds and gears to convince us that this is a performance car. It's not the perfection that we are given, It's what our psychology, our psyche needs to attach a definition of performance to this now a crazy fast, not a muscle car. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Now, this would normally be the point of our episode where we play your favorite game of mine, the options game, but Arthur, he wanted to have a discussion about design. And as such, he brought his Charger. Not joking, that's his car. The name of the car is Trickster. Technically, it belongs to his mother, who also flies that airplane. Yes, that is her name on the side of the airplane. See, he's very excited about this whole thing. I know, buddy. Ready? So the big thing he wanted to point out was this is very much a Charger. You look at this thing, it's not so much a carbon copy of this car, it's an interpretation of this car. And a great example of that is you look at the front and you see basically the open grille there. Here you really didn't need a grille, so they did an interpretation of that wing, which you probably have heard about many times. But the general idea is to somehow channel the air around the car while still maintaining the design ethos of a Mopar. But then they brought it into 2025 to make the car. Let's show them the practicality, buddy. This is not a Charger, it's a hatchback, which I find fascinating about this car. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna close this. You ready, buddy? Let's close this. And he brought another surprise here, and that is the build sheet of this car. But to have the discussion about this car, we gotta find out how much this car is. And that's where Arthur says you should belt in, because when I think of Mopar, I don't think of expensive cars. This has a base price of $64,995. When this first landed at the hangar, there were two disparate Chargers on offer. There was the Daytona RT, which is the base car, lower horsepower, and this, the Scat Pack. But in exactly the time that we had the car, Stellantis decided to discontinue, at least for 2026, the Daytona RT. Doesn't mean it's not available, it's still available on dealer lots, but the ones you do find on dealer lots are heavily discounted, like under $40,000. And then there is a rumor going around that the Scat Pack for 2026 will have a price reduction, at least the base price. But for now, to get that extra power and that little badge on the side, $3,200. Then you want this cool blue paint, which I had to wait for. That's $795. Then you want the package that gives you all the good stuff. That's $5,000, but you have to get that package to get the frunk on an electric car. Now, if you're buying a muscle car and you get a cool paint job like this, you need a cool color on the inside. That would be demonic red, which is an additional $495. Then, of course, you need a sunroof and a cool stereo. That's $2,500. Sunroof doesn't open, by the way. Then, of course, you need the fancy brakes and the spoiler. That's $4,500. Then you need the better wheels and the carbon fiber dress up and the suede and all that kind of stuff. That's an additional $3,000. Then this car is actually made in the same country that this car was originally sold in, the exotic port of call of Ontario. Well, this one came from Calgary. This car is $2,000 to get across the border, which brings us to, and this is where Arthur wants you to belt in, $86,460 for a Dodge. And this is where we get into some numbers, because we want to talk about inflation. This car, Arthur, can you stand over there? Yeah, thank you. I want to share this. He's going to go off screen and take a break here. You see, I have the original build sheet of the car, and I have the original window sticker, and the dealer this car was sold at still exists. So here, the basic was $3,900 Canadian. Today, that's just under 30,000 US. Now, one would look at this and say, wait a minute, that's double the price, but it's got the flashiest, see what I did there, of propulsion systems. So let's translate the back into 1969. What was the best propulsion system you can get? This car's got the 440, which is the one you wanted to drive, but if you wanted the race car, you had to get the Hemi, which was a very cold-blooded engine. But the Hemi, there was always the old joke, how do you end the argument between the GM and the Ford guys? you bring out the Hemi. That was $1,056 in US dollars to pay for that option. Translated into $2,025, that is $9,000. So let's call the fanciest one in 1969 was 40 grand. This is more than double in 2025. So yes, you and I could drone on about the details of how this thing drives and the minutia of that spoiler that's sort of like F1 meets muscle car in the front, and then the sound, and then even a mechanical limited slip differential in the rear electric module. But that's not the headline here. The headline here, this ain't a muscle car. At least it doesn't drive like a muscle car. This is a very big car. My God, you feel that 5,700 pounds going around corners, on and off the brakes. On a side note there, the brakes work incredibly well at managing a 5,700 pound, very tall car. But really what's going on here? It may not be a muscle car, but what is it? This? It may say Dodge, but it's a luxury car. This thing is lovely to drive around town. It is cushy, it's big, it drives like an S-Class. Remember the 222 S-Class, the W222 S-Class? Now where this parts ways with an S-Class in terms of driving dynamics, the steering around town, the steering, even in the lower modes, all of them, the steering it's not numb, it's just not enough. It needs more weight, more direction, more feel in the steering to reinforce that this, A, is a performance car, B, is something that can handle that kind of power. Now, yeah, in the track mode, they do tune it a bit better, but even there, it's still missing something. Maybe it's just the feel, but overall, that's the only thing that really lets down that this is a luxury car. And just like that, our little telenovela about a totally new kind of Dodge turns into reality TV. It is currently about 7:30 p.m. here in the California Republic, and that won't start. But what I didn't tell you was, this is not the first time the car has bricked itself in my time with it. A couple of days ago, I took it to the gym in the morning. It wouldn't start after the gym. The folks at Stellantis, they came and took it to the dealer. They reset, I think they updated the firmware or something like that. And long and short of the story, it worked. And then we were just finishing our martini shot with that, the Lamborghini. Yes, that was our camera car for a Dodge. And it didn't start. So I spoke to my contact at the fleet company that manages Stellantis, and they're trying to get an engineer on the line. So hopefully we could start this. Okay, so I just got off the phone with the engineer, and apparently the 12-volt battery, you have to disconnect the ground, and hopefully that would reset the car enough to start it. So that's where we're at. However, this is the only tool I have with us today. So apparently we're not going to reset the 12-volt battery. My thinking is we leave this for the tow truck and take the Lamborghini back. So you'll find out at the end of the episode. So let's you and I back down to the auto mode and have a come-to-Jesus discussion about some things here. We've learned that this is a wonderful luxury car, and the inside needs to reflect that. There are some things that are very good, as we learned in the options game. There are some dress-up bits, like this. I don't know if it's real suede, but it works. But if I'm making a very large, luxurious car, I want some things to work, especially if I'm doing details like the pageantry of a pistol grip shifter. This lovely that they have hard controls for the vents, like the ones, the fan here, adjust the temperature, all the HVAC stuff. That's lovely, but it's one button. The whole thing is one button. They were smart enough to do knobs and a tuning knob. These are the kind of details that reinforce luxury, the kind of people that buy $86,000 cars. They're not all looking for an iPad on wheels, especially the kind of people that buy Mopars. They're looking for like rotary controllers and toggle switches and knobs. And to some extent, they do that here. They've got real buttons on the steering wheel, and pretty much everything can be controlled with the exception of infotainment as well as HVAC over here. I can do the drive modes, and then I do have to just take my hat off to all things like Chrysler, because they're the ones that brought it to the table. The controls behind the steering wheel, volume, tuning, switching between applications, it's now to the point that not Ferrari, but Lamborghini has ripped off this idea. It's that good of an idea. All the switchgear kind of works, but beyond that, you do see the base $50,000 Dodge they were going for, which I'm guessing the gasoline car, that'll probably be the base price. And here my message is, if you're going to make a luxury car, all of this stuff, at least at this level, in this model, needs to support the basic of 65 and then the realities of 86 that we're driving today. Then you don't have to give the false pretense of, oh my God, it's a muscle car and we can get away with details that are less than what we're trying to accomplish. In this, a luxury car masquerading as a muscle car. So putting it all together, the spaciousness, the way it sounds, the way it drives, it reinforces a couple of things. While it may not be a Dodge, it reinforces that it's different, and this different, while expensive, may be good in a way. So yes, our hero car did indeed make it back to the hangar. I am somewhat embarrassed to admit that Matt and I made the executive call to abandon ship and leave the Charger there. Now granted, we made this decision after we spoke with our consigliere, otherwise known as Mike T, who represents the logistics company behind these cars. We've worked with him for like 15 years now. Great guy. He was going to send a flatbed up, pick the car up. So we decided, you know what, we're going to pack all the camera gear up and take the reliable Lamborghini back to the hangar. But in the time it took us to pack everything up, the Charger reset itself. So we were able to go back under our own steam with both cars. And long and short of the story, you're probably thinking that Arthur and I are beating up at the folks at Stellantis, and that's really not the case. I bring this up because this is not the only car that does it when we've driven a totally new EV platform. Like, there were others that were just terrible, like the Volvo EX90. That car locked us out of it for an hour. We had all the different ways to get in, and it said, see, he's just not happy about this. He was more disappointed about the Volvo than this one. And then I think the VW ID4, that was also had some teething problems. And then the Ioniq series, great car, but there were some issues with the batteries, and if you had to replace the batteries, they were crazy expensive. This is a very graphic demonstration of when you move to a totally new EV platform. However, this is not a total EV platform, and something tells me originally it was supposed to be, but then the folks on the board probably said, you know what, I see governments changing here. Maybe we should plan for gasoline engine, and as such, it's built to accept that Hurricane inline turbo 6, great engine, a lot of torque, something like 555 horsepower. That will be in this, as well as the four-door, which was introduced while we had this car. Now that we got that good news out of the way, let's switch gears into what the original ending of this episode was supposed to be, an interpretation of what this really should be. I guarantee you probably have watched most every review of this thing, and if someone were being honest with you, they would be like, man, this is way the hell too expensive, and frankly, it ain't a muscle car, which is all true. However, now that I've spent some time with it, it's a luxury car we've covered, and I think the entire concept, the strategy of this was wrong. It never should have been a Dodge, because 65 grand, 86,000 for this one, and frankly has bricked itself twice in a week. What this should have been was, let's spend some time making sure the platform works, and brought back Peugeot to the US as a $65,000 large luxury coupe with crazy French design. And no one would have said boo about the price or how it drives, and everyone would have been excited, like, hey man, we finally have a different choice from Europe. But I'm just one man, one episode. I turn around to you guys to apply in the comments below or via social media. MotoManTV on word, MotoManTV on word, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And with that, I want to thank the proprietors of this hangar, the plane, and the car. That would be Arthur, his mother, and I will say my friend Dave as well. Until I see you in the next episode, be später. Hey, you know what? That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.